Sekeres and Price for Friday, June 27th, 2025. Coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the historic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver. And this program, a presentation of Bet365. Matt Sekeres, virtually alongside Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson, hitting switches and conducting things. We have just finished our live stream from the National Hockey League, or on the National Hockey League entry draft. It is proceeded through 12-13 picks here in the first round, and we join you here and now on the podcast side as we prepare for the Vancouver Canucks first round selection at number 15 overall. There is scant little time now, Blake Price, for the Canucks to trade this pick that everybody and their dog thought would be traded when the season ended. We have just come off a couple of, reasonably surprising picks. Benjamin Kindle of Burnaby goes 11th overall to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, a lot of people out there thought that Kindle, whose parents played for the Whitecaps, would be a first-round selection tonight, that he had a terrific junior hockey career with the Calgary Hitmen. It's just nobody, very few, I think, would have expected he would have gone 11th overall, and particularly with some of these forwards that are still on the board. That was the first surprise at number 11. Then the surprise at number 12. The Penguins trade that pick with their cross-Commonwealth rivals, the Philadelphia Flyers. Rick talking to the Philadelphia Flyers, trade their 22nd overall and pick 31 overall, both in the first round, to move up the 10 spots with Pittsburgh, and they select Jack Nesbitt, who's a big center with the Windsor Spitfires. Nesbitt, like Kindle, a lot of people thought, yeah, he would go in the first round, but probably closer to 20, 25, somewhere in that range. So we've got a couple of forwards here who have outperformed their position on the consensus boards and the public lists, and that has created a pretty interesting situation for the Vancouver Canucks coming down to pick 15. There are a number of forwards who I suspect the old adage, we couldn't believe he was there, would apply to. Whether that's Djurgården's winger Victor Eklund out of Sweden, whether that's Everett Silvertips forward Carter Bear, whether that's Braden Coots, the Seattle Thunderbird centerman, and probably the best pure centerman available here, whether that's Justin Carbonneau, the big scoring winger from the Quebec League, whether that's Cole Reshny from across the Georgia Strait with the Victoria Royals, where he had a terrific second half of the season last year. There's also a couple of defensemen that are still on the board in Jackson Smith, the Western Hockey Leaguer, a big smooth skating lefty, and Keishon Aitchison, a very hard-hitting, competitive, and in-the-mix defenseman for the Barrie Colts in the Ontario Hockey League. Do we have Blake back?
I hope so.
Yes, there you are.
But you don't have Carter Bear available to the Vancouver Canucks.
He's now gone, 13th overall to Detroit.
Yeah, so Canucks waiting on these final few moments here to piggyback on what has been a mildly busy week with the acquisition of Evander Kane, the signing of Connor Garland this week. Today, and yet I think the lack of this trade, Matt, I think is probably going to disappoint some people. I think people saw this draft pick as an avenue to a second-line center. And it's not to say that a second-line center still is impossible for the Vancouver Canucks, because maybe, and I throw this out just as an example, maybe Bill Guerin would rather Lekramaki and Dakota Joshua than a 15th overall and Dakota Joshua. Maybe that sounds a little bit closer to competing for him. Who's to know? But I can understand that some people are a little bit disappointed that we're in this place here where the Canucks are actually using this draft pick. But it doesn't mean that a trade still isn't in the offing here over the course of the next 3 days.
Well, you say there will be some who are disappointed, and I would imagine some of the disappointed will be at Rogers Arena right now in their draft room, thinking that they would be able to use this 15th overall to go out and get that top 2 center they so need. But I think there's also going to be a lot of people who are quite happy the Canucks used this pick. The draftists, the rebuildists, those who say, how many picks and prospects are we going to trade out with this organization, especially if it's just in the name of trying to make the playoffs and not build a championship club. And I suspect you'll have a lot more of those people, or some people who have come on board to that side, because of the quality of player who's going to be available to them here. I would have thought there was a world where they didn't think Victor Eklund would be there at 15. They didn't think Coots or Carbonneau or Smith or Aitchison, the defense, weren't there at 15. So there are some attractive prospects here. There are some attractive prospects that were way higher than number 15 overall on a lot of the public lists. And I think while there might be many disappointed that the Canucks have thus far failed to land that second line center they so desperately need, I think some will take longer range, bigger picture views in terms of adding a young, cheap, controllable player here at 15th overall.
Matt, do they owe it to themselves? And no one wants to hear talk like this, but do they need Quinn Hughes insurance with Jackson Smith available here potentially for the Canucks at 15?
Yep. Look, Aitchison and Jackson Smith, they are both left shot defensemen, different profiles of guy. Jackson Smith is more defense first, but he's not inept with the puck, and he's a very good skater. Aitchison is more physical. He's got a great shot. He'll be more of a goal scorer. Anyways, this is an interesting predicament, especially with the draft, Blake, that thus far has seen zero trades when it comes to picks for roster players. We saw one earlier today when Noah Dobson was traded from the Islanders to the Canadiens for 2 first-round picks, 16 and 17. We anticipated, given all the activity and all the reports that were out there, that we would see picks for player trades here in this first round. And, of course, we could still see that. It's not even half over. But thus far, there has been nobody willing to give up a player for a pick here from the floor in Los Angeles.
And it sounds like it's going to be Kashan Aitchison at number 14. So
for Columbus.
So if that's the case, then there's still a lot of options here for the Vancouver Canucks. I mean, Aitchison was a guy in the middle of this first round, but this is high for Kashan Aitchison based on a lot of the numbers that I'm looking at in terms of his projections. It's not exceedingly high. We're not talking 10 spots above, but this was about as high as I think most people thought Kashan Aitchison could get picked. So I would think the Vancouver Canucks feel like they're in a pretty good spot right now here.
Yeah, he had helium. He's a very charismatic young man, and so I think he won some people over at the combine. Also, a physical defenseman, 6'1", 200 pounds, with a great shot. There's a lot to like there. Let's bring in Jeff Patterson, our Canucks reporter, the host of Rink Wide Vancouver. He is down at Rogers Arena following the proceedings. Jeff, thanks for joining. Just first and foremost, what has struck you here as we near the Canucks pick at number 15?
The fact that we're still waiting for the Vancouver Canucks to make a pick. This thing has dragged along. And I think in years gone by, we forget the first round generally takes about 3 hours. This one is on pace to be longer than that. And you know what? I said on X, like visually, I think there's a lot to like in the presentation of this draft. The Zoom room thing has to go. And then the secondary interview right after the Zoom room. So there's some clunkiness to it. I'm not huge on the celebrities, but I get it. Showbiz, and they're trying to spruce it up a little bit. But through all of that, the fact that there have been very few surprises and very few trades, I guess, to this stage of the proceedings is sort of the overwhelming sentiment that for the most part, it has gone according to a lot of people's forms. After about the fifth pick, you can start to quibble with some of the projections that are out there. But Ben Kindle going where he went is a cool local story, obviously, having all of us covered his parents. But that one maybe is a surprise so far through the first 14 picks of this draft. So, yeah, I mean, we were expecting some fireworks, a lot of talk about teams looking to trade and trade down in the draft, whatever the case. I haven't seen a lot of that. And now we shall see. After months and months of, and look, I was firmly in the camp that thought there was no chance the Canucks would use 15 on this night. It looks and feels like they're going to step to their virtual podium at the very least and make the pick.
Do you think they will have cover in terms of explaining using this pick, Jeff, because of the fact that so few picks have been moved and particularly moved for roster players?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, it sounds like they have been in and active on a lot of phone calls, but haven't been able to consummate any deals yet. And just because it doesn't happen, look, JT Miller was traded before things got underway on the second day of the draft in 2019 here in Vancouver. So, if the Canucks use their pick tonight, it doesn't mean that they can't still be active on the trade front tomorrow or the day after that. We see lots of times as well that in previous years with previous draft configurations where a lot of the groundwork was laid on the draft floor, teams would head back to their war rooms, and a couple days after the draft, maybe you would see a trade come down the pipe that way. So if you're one that's waiting for the Canucks to make a trade, don't lose all hope if it doesn't happen this evening. But I think I will be surprised. I'm not going to be surprised now, but I think I am surprised that it's come to this, that they will use this 15th overall selection.
And everybody in the NHL, Jeff, seems to think that they are close to winning. With the boost in the salary cap, it just feels like everybody's got this misunderstood value of their own roster. I wonder if further along prospects are worth more to teams, Lekramacki's and Wielanders. If we're going to look at what assets they could use to find a center, maybe those are worth more than the pick right now.
Yeah, and I'm surprised that we really haven't seen or heard the fallout from the Minnesota deal, where it sounded like the Canucks offered 15 plus, and nobody seems to know what the plus was, but it wasn't enough, obviously, to get the interest of the Minnesota Wild to sign off on that deal. And again, and I said to you guys when I was on last week, I think that doesn't mean that trade is necessarily dead and buried. It's just that the first foray for the Canucks wasn't to Minnesota's liking. So you're right, and maybe Minnesota wanted to get through the draft weekend here and sort of see how the chips fall and take stock of where they are and where some of the other teams that they're battling with, and then maybe they circle back with the Vancouver Canucks. So, I mean, there's been so much talk, and the Canucks have been linked to Marco Rossi for so long. Again, I'm not prepared to throw that out of the window entirely at this juncture, but we shall see. And look, maybe the Canucks make a pick here with a player that turns out to be, maybe they don't trade the pick itself, but maybe the player that they get could be peddled. We certainly have seen that in all sports. After the fact, you include that player in a package of some sort. So, again, lots of moving parts here, but the end result, and I know we're doing this in real time, I'm sort of looking off to the side to keep an eye on the TV screen here at Rogers Arena. Canucks are next up. They're on the clock here. So.
The Canucks are on the clock. It's Jackson Smith, the big left shot defenseman from Tri-City in the Western Hockey League, who goes 14th overall to Columbus. So, Blake, they do go defenseman. They just don't go Aitchison.
Not Aitchison, yeah.
Smith. So, Aitchison's available here for the Canucks. Let's run down the rest of the list. I think there will be many who are stunned that Victor Eklund is still on this board. The smaller, pugnacious Swedish winger from Djurgårdens. Braden Coots, probably the best centerman available right now with the Seattle Thunderbirds. Does he have enough offensive upside to be a second-line center in the NHL, or are you just going to get a very good third-line center? Didn't play with great talent this year. Those who like him, love him, think he's a highly intelligent player with a two-way game who's got enough skill to hang in an NHL top six. Justin Carbonneau, the nearly 6'2", 200-plus pound winger from the Quebec League, who's got one of the better shots, some of the best skill in this draft. There's some skating concerns there. And then there's Cole Reshny, who everybody likes as a smart forward. There is some talk about whether the former Victoria Royal is going to be able to hang at center ice in the National Hockey League. He's a smaller or lighter guy, but everybody suspects you're getting a pretty useful middle six forward there. Pride of Kelowna, Lyndon Lakovic, who's a 6'4" would-be power forward from Moose Jaw. I say that because every write-up I read about him is that the kid needs to use his size and be more physical, that he's got the makings of a power forward game. He just thus far hasn't played physically enough to profile as that in the National Hockey League. So those are the players available to you. Of course, they could go with somebody else. We've already seen a couple of big surprises here. Guys, I'd be really interested to know, is the phone lighting up in Bill Guerin's office right now going, okay, Bill, here you go, last and best, 15th overall plus whomever for Marco Rossi.
Well, especially because you have some names that have slid here a little bit, right? Just in case. Now, what are the chances the guy who's trying to unload the small center is interested in a slightly undersized winger? But I mean, a guy like Aitchison is, we'll see. I don't know that at this late stage it's likely. But
it is former Canuck Director of Amateur Scouting Judd Brackett making the calls there, right, for who they select. And we know Judd has had great success there. Sorry, Jeff.
Well, I was just saying, in any other year, if I'm the Vancouver Canucks and you get to this stage, I am bolting to my Zoom screen or however they're doing the selections and taking Keishon Aitchison. Like I love the idea of that player, and I think Canuck fans would love that player. But this is a team that is in such dear need for offensive upside now and to stock the cupboards as well. So I don't think that this is the year to be going defenseman, but I just liked so much about that player. And Blake, we had a good chat with Cam Robinson the other day when Matt was off, talking again about the attributes of Aitchison, who can beat in a bunch of different ways. I think I'm fascinated to see here, and we won't have to wait long. If the Canucks do use the pick, in some ways, guys, I think this is going to be really telling. Because Eklund is still on the board, there is a strong possibility that for a fourth straight year under Patrick Allvin, the Canucks will use their first pick in the draft on a Swede.
Yep.
That can't be a coincidence.
Nope.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but there are some in our listening audience that constantly point to the fact that the Canucks seem to look past their own backyard, look past the Western Hockey League, and it's not that they don't select out of the Western Hockey League, Sawyer Minio, Parker Alkos, in recent years, but in using their first pick. Now, Lecker-Mackey, Wielander, first rounders. Last year was Melvin Fernstrom, who was a third rounder, but still, when they finally had a chance to pick, they used it on a Swede. So, is that a pattern? Is it a trend? Is it a coincidence? Is it when the best player available, the tipping point default goes to the Swedish player from the Swedish general manager? It's certainly worth noting at the very least. And of course, the Canucks have had a long history of success with Swedes. I'm not suggesting that there's anything wrong, but I just think that it can't be a coincidence, that there has to be more to a pattern there.
They probably trust their European and Swedish scouts a little more. They have the camera set up in the Canucks draft war room. There is not a lot of activity there, as we're now inside of 1 minute before the Vancouver selection.
We should point out, Matt, that just for those wondering, the war room, and some of these teams have been set up in their own National Hockey League team dressing rooms. The Canucks are in the 8th floor boardroom of the tower here that is attached to Rogers Arena. So that's where they're doing their heavy lifting here this afternoon.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Blake brought it up, but insurance for Quinn Hughes, Jeff, do you have to start thinking about that? Does that make a defenseman a little more possible here?
I suppose so. I mean, I think that's part of the reason that they, again, have been linked to Bowen Byram this week, too. I mean, I think everything's in play, but there's absolutely Jim Rutherford's on a record, essentially, acknowledging the possibility that they may need a replacement, or at least something, a reasonable facsimile. You're not going to replace Quinn Hughes. So, yeah, I mean, look, they would have better intel than we do if they've had any indication from Quinn, or if they're hedging their bet in that way, that maybe that is something that they have to consider at the very least. I still expect them, if they're using the pick, to take a forward. It's just a question of which one.
Cam Robinson is saying that either Eklund or Aitchison would be considered a home run given their draft slot. So
Michael Samuelsson will be making the pick for the Vancouver Canucks. So is that a bit of a tell?
Yeah.
Of course, Michael working over in Europe, in Sweden. working with Canucks prospects. I'll say this, Michael looks fantastic. He looks in even better shape now than when he was as a Blue. Looks a little thinner. Wow, how about that? Retired with all those millions of dollars and he got thinner. Well done, Michael.
Going to have to hustle home from Los Angeles development camp starting this weekend for the Vancouver Canucks.
That's right.
And of course, he's a big part of the development department now for this hockey club.
And the pick is in. And the Vancouver Canucks have selected Braden Coots, the centerman from the Seattle Thunderbirds. We talked about Coots as being the best center iceman available here. We talked about Coots in terms of, and Mertka, this would go for Mertka as well, the big right shot defenseman who went to Buffalo in the top 10. The Seattle Thunderbirds had been such a good program for a number of years. As we know, junior hockey tends to be cyclical. That they were left there as a couple of 18-year-olds, not necessarily with the deepest or most talented group of teammates in Seattle this year. So everything, I think, a little bit with a grain of salt when we talk about the statistics of Braden Coots this season, playing on a team that just didn't necessarily have the firepower of a lot of other clubs in the Western Hockey League. But this is a pure center, and there's a lot of sort of hybrid can he play center guys in this draft. He measured 5'11 and a half, weighed in at 186 pounds at the NHL Draft Combine a couple of weeks ago. We mentioned the points, 26 goals, 63 assists, so he was better than a point-per-game player for Seattle. He also got a chance to play for Canada at the World Under-18s, of course, with Seattle not being a postseason factor. Take these stats as well with a grain of salt because you're playing some teams that just really can't hang with Canada. So it was 12 points in 7 games at the World Under-18s. The Hockey News ranked him as 13th overall, Blake. I know you got the elite prospect list there.
They had him ranked 16th in the range of 12 to 19. The one thing I'll say that differentiates his profile versus a guy like an Eklund is top 6 potential. They carve out the spot, the possibility that he could be, but this is a worker. This is a worker bee, a forechecking machine. The skill is not the biggest attribute, and we talked about there were skill guys there. Eklund and Carbonell are skill guys. Yep. And for a team that
they're wingers, Blake. They're wingers. Yeah. And this is a right shot centerman. Mm-hmm. Sherwood Park, Alberta kid, so one province over. Look, I mentioned I played golf with a couple of WHL players this week. They raved about this young man. I was throwing names at them, giving them comparisons. Who would you take, Coots or this guy, Coots or Reshny, Coots or some of the other Western League forwards? And time after time, they would say Coots. He plays in all situations, power play, penalty kill. He'll be out there protecting a lead late at the junior level. We'll see about that in the National Hockey League. He's got pretty good hands. He's one of these kids, Blake, that if he was an inch or two bigger and 15 pounds heavier, I think there's no way he would be available to the Canucks at 15th overall. The IQ is very, very high here. Everybody seems to like the intelligence that he plays with on the ice. He just may fall a little bit short on a skill and scoring level to be a prototypical NHL.
How's this strike you, Jeff?
Well, and I know you guys got Cam Robinson coming up, and certainly Cam follows this as closely as anybody. I will admit I'm at an arm's length at that, when it comes to the ins and outs of prospects. But when we had Cam on the other day, and I asked him if they get Coots, will they be happy? Should Canuck fans be happy? And there was sort of a muted response from Cam, in as much as everybody loves the person, the high quality and character that you talked about there, but it is a question of what's the top end here for a team that needs centermen, certainly, but just elite skill. This is a guy that, I think the fact he's a right shot center, don't sleep on that. This is absolutely an organizational need. So I like that. But if I'm a Canuck fan here, I need to like more than the way he holds his stick. And so, it does check a box. Without a doubt, it checks a box. And it's crazy that we sit here still, and it's been a bunch of years, and we talk about the fact that they have done their bidding without right shot centers at the National Hockey League level for basically too long now. I guess Lindholm was in here briefly, but I think it's a safe pick, and when I say that, I just mean that there's a sure floor here for this guy. It's just the question of ultimately, what is the ceiling? But that's what you deal with when you're picking 15th overall.
Yeah.
So let's reset here. Our top story brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. The Vancouver Canucks keep their first-round selection 15th overall and select Seattle Thunderbird centerman Braden Coots with that pick. The other thing I'll say, guys, for eager beager Canucks fans, this is a kid you can drive down and watch play next season.
True.
Right? If you're,
comes through Vancouver, plays against the Giants, right?
He's going to play the Giant, absolutely. Yeah. So this is a kid we're going to, because the Western Hockey League, or because he's from our part of the world, we're going to be able to keep a little closer tabs on him because he is going to be a major junior player next year. And look, I don't suspect we're looking at an NHL Player of the Year after that either. No. I think this is probably on the 3-year program. I know now we're seeing a little bit more of draft plus 2 years guys getting opportunity, and that's fair. I don't want to limit them. Perhaps that's available to them, but I think you're counting on this player on your NHL roster. I think you're talking 3 years away before you can realistically expect anything from him. Let's get to the Whistler Golf Club poll question asking you, how do you feel about the Canucks keeping their first round pick and selecting a player? Like it, dislike it? Blake?
I think it is disappointing in the end. I'll give them the off-ramp of, based on what we saw around the league, I get why it happened, but I think it's still possible that you can still say you don't like it. I know nobody was able to pull off a draft floor, asterisk draft floor trade here, but maybe you could have been the one. I just wonder what the circumstances were that led to this. And I don't know if we're going to get an honest response from Patrick Allvin as to why it ended up being kept, and if they fought tooth and nail because they don't want to take away from Braden Coots' moment, I don't think, and say, yeah, we tried to trade it. We settled on the kid. So I don't know that we'll ever get the honest answer there, but I'll say I don't like it because there was always the potential this was used to help get them an NHL center.
Jeff?
I'll lean towards I like it. I guess for the last 48 hours, I sort of had come to the realization that it just felt like they were going to use the pick. And so organizationally, they need right shot centers. I like the fact, as you said, and this is just value added, that he is playing down the highway and will be through Langley, and you can watch him and follow his progression. And, it's not a guy that's grown up on the other side of the world, and you're going to have to watch grainy film of him. You can get your eyeballs on him. And, as we said, Seattle's been a model program in the Western Hockey League here for the last couple of years, and got to the Memorial Cup when it was held up in Kamloops a couple of seasons ago, produced a bunch of really good players over the last years. And so I like that fact that he's coming from a program that had a track record of success here in the last little while. So all things considered, it doesn't blow me out of the water, but again, this wasn't a top 5 pick. This was sort of the kind of player that I expected that they would get, and he had been linked to the Canucks for so long that I am not surprised that Braden Coots ends up being the selection of the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jeff. We were talking about this young man March, April in terms of, it looks like he'll probably be there for the Canucks around where they pick. Right shot center from this neck of the woods. Good two-way guy. I'm going to vote like it. Look, if you could have swung one of these deals like Montreal got for Noah Dobson, like Utah got for J.J. Peterka, where the cost of acquisition wasn't as steep as we thought it might be, then I would have been all for trading the 15th overall selection, given the way the Canucks are managed and what their priorities are in terms of the playoffs next year. and Quinn Hughes. But I've been one of the many people who have said, look, you're just kicking the can down the road and eventually delaying the rebuild that's going to come, or you're going to fall short of building a championship team because you trade out so many prospects and picks. So from that standpoint, I quite like it. And, you know, as I mentioned, I played golf with a couple of WHL players this week who just raved about the young man. So I've got to admit that is influencing my decision as well. I'm going to vote like it on the Whistler Golf Club poll question. The Arnold Palmer designed Whistler Golf Club now taking bookings for any time during the 2025 season. Primetime's filling up fast. Whether you're golfing or just visiting Whistler, check out Palmer's Gallery Bar and Grill. That overlooks the 18th green. It's home of Whistler's Best Burger. Fantastic selection of local beers there as well. And if you do have a group of 12 or more, tell them about your group, whistlergolf.com/groups. Other thing I'd like to say now is Blake tracks our YouTube subscriptions, and we're getting close to a big round number there. So if you are watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe. Blake is going to be such a happy guy if we get to that big round number by the end of the weekend. He'll be beaming on Monday, and really, Mike and I need him beaming on Monday after a very early flight back from Toronto. Ain't that the case, Mike?
I will shout out whoever becomes that 10,000th subscriber. And I will also shout out Eagle Bay, who has been donating super chats with no comments, just wants to get those proceeds to the BC Mental Health Foundation.
Very nice.
A big thank you to Eagle Bay for contributing in that regard.
We do have Cam Robinson coming up here from the draft in Los Angeles when he gets a minute to sneak away. And we now do have Victor Eklund selected in this first round. The New York Islanders must be absolutely giddy. Now, he's not James Higgins, the Long Island guy that they were hoping to get when they made this trade with Montreal for the 2 first-round picks, 16 and 17. But I'm going to guess they didn't expect that Eklund would be available to them at 16th overall. So the New York Islanders going to walk away from this draft from Matthew Schaefer, the first overall. Maybe the biggest faller in Eklund at 16, and they've got the next selection here as well, so we'll see what they do. Jeff, our first opportunity to talk to you about this matter with the Vancouver Canucks, so let's get off the draft for a moment and talk about Connor Garland and this rumored 6-year, $6 million per year extension. What are our thoughts there?
I'm all right with it. I think that's the price of doing business in the new economy of the rising salary cap world in the National Hockey League. It's a slight raise for a guy who has battled hard for a bunch of years for the Vancouver Canucks. My issue isn't with the contract or with the player. It's on a really good team, on a Stanley Cup contender. Connor Garland is a third-line guy, a guy that drives a third line and gives your third line an edge over most of your opponents. But you tell me, how long are we going to have to wait for the Vancouver Canucks to have 6 forwards better than Connor Garland? And that's my issue, that Connor Garland's already here. He's been part of this team that has spun its wheels for far too long, aside from the outlier season that was last year. And you know exactly what you're getting in Connor Garland. He's a 50-point guy, no more, no less. The engine's going. He wins puck battles. He's fun to watch. He's hard to play against, all those types of things. But he's a 50-point guy at the end of the day. He's consistently a 50-point guy, and there's nothing wrong with that. And the going right now for 50-point guys is going to be in that neighborhood of $6 million. So, I think it's in line with the kind of contract that he deserves. 6 years, maybe a little surprised when they have made it so abundantly clear that they didn't want to go long-term with Brock Besser, but they're willing to go long-term with just about anybody that's not named Brock Besser, it feels like. And, they were quick to give extensions to Marcus Patterson and Drew O'Connor. And here, before he's even eligible to sign an extension, I don't know what the hurry was necessarily, but they're getting a deal done with Connor Garland. So, again, that just lends me more ammunition, I guess, to think that Brock Besser has turned the page, and certainly the reports out there today that he's going to market, and that's not a surprise. I am going to be really interested to see, what's at the top of Brock's priority list after years of spinning his wheels here with an underachieving Vancouver Canucks team. I hope he puts himself in a position to win. He's going to get paid wherever he goes.
Sorry, Jeff, let me just jump in because I saw it on Twitter, and I don't know if it's pure rumor, fantasy, what have you, or if there's actually some real to this, but I saw that the Winnipeg Jets were tied to Brock Besser. And when are the Winnipeg Jets ever tied to a free agent, let alone an American free agent who's a scoring winger? But what do we know about Winnipeg? Really good team. And a few hours north of Minnesota and all the family there, right?
It's borderline Minnesota.
If Minnesota doesn't want to pay you because they have other priorities, and you're looking to go closer to home, the way a Canadian community has embraced Brock Besser and the Besser family, that could easily continue in Winnipeg. I'd love it from a Winnipeg lands a big free agent storyline angle. I'd love it from a Brock gets as close to home as he possibly can storyline angle. And quite frankly, if they're losing Nikolai Ehlers, they're going to need some goals, and he's going to get a chance to play some good offensive players.
Yeah, he's sort of the anti-Nikolai Ehlers. Ehlers does it with speed, where that's not Brock's calling card, obviously. But look, I hope that there's a long line of teams that want to get their hands on Brock Besser. I hope he has options. But after years of really not getting much of a sniff in terms of team success, I hope that he uses this opportunity to position himself to play for a team that's going to be a perennial playoff team. That's my wish for him, but ultimately there'll be a ton of factors, I'm sure, that go into all of that. On the Conor Garland front, I will say this, that he's a proud Bostonian, has represented Team USA again at the World Championships. Like he's proudly American. I wondered if he would have looked as a guy, and he said all the right things. I think he's enjoyed his time in Vancouver. I just thought he might be a guy that tried to orchestrate a move closer to home, or at least back across the border. But if he's signing a 6x6 extension here, that would suggest that he wants to be here. We know how much he enjoyed playing for Rick Tocchet in two different spots. I always kind of thought maybe there was a way that they would be reunited for a third time, and somewhere down the line it may happen. But in the short term, for Conor Garland, good on him. He's fun to watch, as I said, and that he's just going to show up and compete and play hard. It's just they need more. They just need a lot more than, and that's why, like, even if they decide to bite the bullet and go with P.S. Suter and find a way to get, like, that's fine. But he was here too. Like,
yes,
they got to get better. And
the same crew with Evander Kane is not actually getting you that much further ahead here. And Evander Kane instead of Besser, ultimately. With the 7 more years of Garland, if you can get 5 good ones out of the 7, I think the contract is a win. Do you think you can do that? Do you think he's got 5 good years left in him?
I see no reason why not. He's been really durable in his time as a Canuck. And even though he's undersized, we know how tenacious he is. I think, he seems to take good care of himself and reports in peak shape and all those types of things. I see no reason. Like, I don't see any of his sort of identifiable skills falling off the cliff. Like, skating's not an issue for him, and I don't think it will be as time marches on. And again, he's going to be 30 here. It's not like they're signing this when he's 33. He's not John Tavares at that stage of his career. So, no, look, lots of guys can perform well into their mid-30s. The aging curve doesn't seem to matter to the Dallas Stars. When you look at Joe Pavelski and Jamie Benn and re-upping with Matt Duchene, I think Conor Garland strikes me as a guy that absolutely can continue to give you what he's given you. Again, though, you also know with Conor Garland that, like, I don't see him having a breakout season at this stage of his career. I see him as a guy that's going to push 20 goals and 50 points. You can use him in all situations. He took on penalty killing last year, so we sort of added that. But again, it wouldn't be my choice to have him on your top unit power play, and yet he was consistently out there as that sort of fake slap shot over on the sideboards. He really isn't a shooting threat. He was used as a guy that transported the puck, some entries, puck battles and retrievals, those types of things. But again, if the plan here is for this team to get competitive and be a force in the division and then ultimately get out of the division, they need a whole lot more above Conor Garland. So Conor Garland in the third line position, if you could lock him in there and tell me that they were going to bring in a boatload of guys that could play ahead of him on the depth chart, then fine. But if he is forced to play higher just because they don't have adequate replacements for him yet, that's not ideal. I don't think that's in the best interest of the hockey club.
All right, an update from the draft where you'll be pleased to know that E from Entourage is still a New York Islanders fan and still willing to do NHL events at their beck and call. He announces the third Islanders pick of the day, 17th overall, and the Islanders get the number 1 overall pick and the 2 biggest fallers in this draft in both Victor Eklund and Kashawn Aitchison, the big defenseman from the Barrie Colts that we've been talking about for a number of picks.
That's a draft class. That is a good draft class.
Well, I mean, it cost them Noah Dobson, though, Blake. Let's not remember the costs here.
You're right.
Very, very extreme. A first pair right shot offensive defenseman. They may go many, many years before finding a player like Noah Dobson again, but they got a couple of good young players, and they got great value taking them at 16 and 17. The other story that we've got going on here from this draft, and of course a new setup in LA before a live audience with no teams on the floor. So the stage, Gary is more proximal to his people, Blake. And as you know, this is where Gary lets his hair down and has some fun with the crowd.
Has he danced?
At the draft. He has not yet danced. I have not yet seen him conduct the orchestra in Neil Diamond's Sweet Caroline, as he tends to do from the draft. But I'm seeing some loosey-goosey one-handed handshake / hugs from the commissioner, not the stiff, NHL, code handshake. I do wonder whether that's because of the presence of all the celebrities who are pretty quick to greet these
He might just be going loopy.
Hugs.
He might be going loopy because they're 2.5 hours in. We're just past the halfway mark of the opening round here. The NBA first round took 2 hours totality.
It was very quick, the NBA first round this year. Quickest in many, many years.
That's what it should be. 2 hours is a good draft night. That's a good TV show.
Guys, and
you got to give them some time on the clock because that facilitates trades. I just wonder if Gary's regretting 32 teams now with how long this thing is.
But I think, guys, and we've all covered enough of these things, that once you get past really the top 3 drafts, to me it's far less a national event and more of a regional. Like when the Boston Bruins picked 7th overall, Bruins fans care. The greater audience doesn't need the whole dog and pony show with the Bruins front office, and I don't even care really to hear that much about from the player himself. That Bruins media is going to get a chance and talk to him, and so there are so many ways to tighten it up. They don't consult me in these matters, but this idea that the player does the whole Zoom room thing and then turns around and does a secondary interview right after that with the broadcast host, the clock should start the minute the one pick is in. Then the clock should start again. They seem to be delaying that. Need to go back to the panel for all sorts of discussion. So again, I think visually it looks great. Like I think the set and some of the things that they've done there look really good, but also a few elements that they probably could use a do-over on.
Yeah, and we'll be back to a draft floor with teams next year, and of course we'll be back to draft shout-outs to the watch party happening at the Applebee's in the strip mall off the expressway.
Oh, we still got that from Jeremy Roenick.
Did we?
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
I'll give a shout out to Yellow
Wait a
Dog,
second. That's Chicago?
which hopefully is poured in some of those establishments. Let me shout out the Be Cool Pineapple Tepache from Neighborhood Brewing right now. That's available, a funky little number, inspired by the traditional Mexican tepache. It's bursting with pineapple flavor, hint of cinnamon for some warmth as well. It's a laid-back brew, crispy, tangy. Go find it at your nearest private or government liquor store.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. We appreciate you hanging in with us here today. And I anticipate that the Vancouver Canucks will make at least Todd Harvey available here, their director of amateur scouting, to discuss this pick. Thanks, Jeff. Talk to you Monday.
I think the plan is Patrick Elvine this evening and then Todd Harvey to wrap the draft on Saturday afternoon.
Okay. Good.
Thank you, sir.
It would be interesting to hear what Elvine says with regards to how much trade discussion was around this pick, because as we long suspected, I think the Vancouver Canucks' preference was to make this deal, to use it as part of a package to lure that top 2 center. And guys, maybe one more, Jeff, like Now we're almost at situation critical, right? In terms of this hunt for a top 2 center. Like, now it's going to be more difficult to acquire one via trade, and there are slim pickings on the UFA market. I had asked Blake earlier in the show, are we down to everything, a bidding war on Michael Granlund? Make sure you win the Michael Granlund bidding war.
Boy, and it's so unfair to Michael Granlund, but man, would that be underwhelming for a Vancouver fan base that's seen Marcus Granlund come and go. But yeah, possibly. I will say this, that again, and it's been a storyline here for too long, that the Canucks in the market for help at center ice, that, you know, the best, you're reminded on days like this, the best place to find centers is in the draft and groom them and develop them yourself. But when you look at Abbotsford and how they just won a Calder Cup, you know, it wasn't necessarily on the backs of center ice prospects. I mean, Ty Mueller somewhere down the line, maybe a bottom 6 guy for you, but, you know, Nate Smith was one of the centers out there. Chase Waters probably isn't going to see the National Hockey League, even though a guy gives it all, was the captain out there. And even, you know, Max Sasson, again, isn't a top-end center. So I will say this, that I was curious where Roger McQueen would go, and to see him wind up in Anaheim, a team that already has Leo Carlsson and Mason McTavish, and now you add 6'5" Roger McQueen, that's how you build the middle of the ice.
Yep, they're taking the swing there, hoping his medicals are going to be okay and that he can be a player. And there's some other examples here as well about how you build center ice. Okay, Jeff, we'll let you get to your other duties here this evening. Thank you for this, and we'll catch up on Monday.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks.
Jeff Patterson, our Canucks reporter, the host of Rink-Wide Vancouver, which had a splendid year this year, not only recapping all the Canucks games, all 82, but of course going on that long playoff run with the eventual Calder Cup champion Abbotsford Canucks.
Which, by the way, that rally looked like it was a lot of fun. The Abbotsford rally.
Well, I was going to get to the rally here. First of all, and
there's a lot of WWE walk-ins.
I realized the proceeds, or some proceeds, were going to charity, but to charge your fans for a championship celebration.
Yeah, always handout. Always the handout.
Yeah. Number 2, I think the chairman might have miscalculated how much of the bloom and the shine from the Abbotsford Canucks
would polish up his image.
Yeah, exactly.
It did
because that was a resounding set of boos. I think he did well to escape without a sell the team chant.
No, there was a sell the team
shouted
at him.
It wasn't full or throat.
No,
it was shouted. Yeah. I thought a chant might follow the way that was going. And then thirdly, I loved Manny and the players all leaning in and having the time of their lives. Like, that was a lot of fun. So good on them. And yes, I do wonder whether that reception may affect the chairman in any kind of public appearances or speeches going forward. We know that's on his comfort zone to begin with. He wanted to be right there with the trophy. He wanted to have some of that rub off on him, and he fell somewhat short. Let's get to this development, because we have a draft pick from a BC Major Junior team. Cole Reshny, the forward with the Victoria Royals, has been selected with the 18th overall pick from the Calgary Flames. So he stays here in Western Canada. Cole Reshny had a terrific second half of the season. I'm just trying to get the hometown here on Reshny. Oh, yeah, he's a Saskatchewan boy. Some don't believe he will be an NHL centerman because he's a little bit light and short, but everyone seems to like the whole game. And is he off to North Dakota, Blake, if I'm not mistaken? I believe he is, with the big draft eligible.
That rings a bell, yes.
From the Royals next year. There will be a huge Keaton Verhoff, a huge draft prospect who was supposed to be with the Victoria Royals, but now will be heading to the University of North Dakota. So We have another we have another Western Hockey Leaguer off the board. We have another BC-based Western Hockey Leaguer off the board. Actually, I guess he's the first BC-based Western Hockey Leaguer. The rest of them have come from state of Washington or other environments, province of Alberta. And we still do anticipate a couple of other British Columbians to be selected here in the first round. Lyndon Likovich of Kelowna. He's with the Moose Jaw Warriors. He's a big winger. And then the top goaltender available in this draft, North Vancouver's Joshua Ravensburger, who plies his trade for the Prince George Cougars.
A little color from Coots, by the way. The Canucks draft pick declared himself a former Oilers fan. He says, obviously not
good
anymore.
for him. Yeah.
Obviously not anymore. So he knows which side to bread his butter now.
Yeah.
He's dropped the oil.
Yeah, and one of the things that he was praised for by all the scouts was this is a really smart, put together hockey IQ young man. It seems he's got some IQ off the ice as well, knowing to placate his new fan base and the audience. The other thing is he does seem to be a Western Hockey Leaguer who's going to be staying in Seattle. I may have jumped the gun earlier when I talked about being able to see this guy play down the I-5 and seeing him when he comes through Langley in the LAC to face the Giants, because so many of these Western Hockey Leaguers seem to be exploring their NCAA options, but he is apparently committed to
for next year anyway. For next year.
Next year anyway. I think these are going to be year-to-year propositions going forward here, Blake, with all this WHLers.
It would still behoove him. I mean, that would be a nice development. And actually, if I'm the Canucks, I really don't mind that. Next year in Seattle, year after in NCAA, and then come out and try your hand at professional hockey.
Yeah. Cam Robinson is going to join us here after the 20th overall selection. Cam has duties there, of course, with Elite Prospects, his primary employer, where he's director of film scouting and director of content.
He can't survive on Sekeres and Price money. There's no question about it.
Sekeres and Price can barely survive on Sekeres and Price money, particularly the Price family with all those children and financial needs. Yes, Cam's going to join us here. And I guess that would be, if these picks go down in the order that they should, it wouldn't be that long, but we'll see how much time there is between picks. It gives about 5-6 minutes at minimum before Cam's going to join us. Cam, of course, will have a great book on Braden Coots and be able to break down the pick from that end of things. Something that we used to do all the time at the draft, Blake, and let's bring that back here, because I know audiences in the past have enjoyed this, but we talk about where the Vancouver Canucks selection was ranked in all the different public lists. So let's get to that. Braden Coots was the number 13 overall prospect according to the Hockey News. He was the number 14 overall prospect by the consolidated ratings. There are outlets out there that take the rankings from every list and put them in and come out with your average. Elite Prospects had him at number 16. Bob McKenzie had him at number 18. Craig J. Button didn't love him. He was at number 22. The Hockey News, Tony Ferrari had him number 11. And McKean's had him at number 17. Chris Peters and Flow Hockey at number 14. Down and down it goes, ranked 20th overall amongst North American skaters by NHL Central Scouting, so they didn't particularly love him.
Shane Malloy had him at 20 as well, but I would say it's pretty 50-50. In fact, I'd probably say it's more 60% had him inside the 15 and about 40% on the other side of the 15, but there's enough evidence there that, the Canucks certainly did not reach for this player.
No.
It was a pretty apropos drafting here. The Sportsnet guys, Cosentino 14, Bukala 15, Dauber 15, Smart Scouting 14. So right around where he went.
Yeah, and the other thing we should mention, Kid's been a very good forechecker over the years. Too bad Rick Tocchet isn't here anymore, and who knows, maybe Adam Foote is going to play the exact same system as Rick Tocchet, given that he's sort of like his NHL coaching dad. He hasn't coached with anyone else in the National Hockey League. So in terms of, here's Elite Prospects draft guide on him, a one-man forecheck, Coots' motor and energy are undeniably elite. In a single shift, he can amass multiple retrievals, guiding opponents into a big hit, spinning off a check, passing, winning another race by winning inside position meters before the boards, and repeating this over and over until the puck finds twine. Primarily a playmaker, he escapes with quick passes inside and occasionally deceives opponents to find a backdoor option. After passing, he dashes to the net to create traffic and collect loose pucks. I'll read a couple of things here from anonymous scouts who spoke to the Hockey News on Braden Coots. Quote, he's one of my favorites. He doesn't have anyone to play with, and he gets the tough matchups, and he still really makes things happen. He's really smart with deceptive skill. He skates well, and he plays hard. He checks all the boxes.
Alberta guys, as we mentioned, Sherwood Park, but did come out to the Yale Academy, so there's some roots out here, and now with Seattle too. The one playoff series for this year for the Seattle Thunderbirds is actually better rate than his regular season. He had 2 goals, 6 assists, 8 points in the 6 games for the Seattle Thunderbirds. So, tough time of year, and they were not a great team, Seattle. So to be undermanned or underskilled as a team, but for still to have a great playoff series like that, that's also a nice little feather in his cap.
Dominic is in our super chats, and everybody, our super chats are always open on YouTube. Partial proceeds to the BC Mental Health Foundation. Another thing we should say is hit that subscribe button. We are very close to a big round number, and Blake would really like if you subscribed and got us to that big round number by Monday's program. Dominic says, Canadian, Irish, gritty, captain material. Love it.
I didn't know the Irish part. It's good.
Yeah, I guess. And he spells it B-R-A-E-D.
Maybe that's the hint.
That's the other thing we should talk about here, Blake. This is an all-time dub name. Braden Coots. Every year at the WHL Bantam Draft, or they just call it the WHL Draft now, we look for the Bradens, the Aidens, the Jadens, all the Duns. Caden, how could I forget Caden? I am sure that we would have name-checked Braden Coots a few years ago when he came into the dub, because that is an all-time dub name there.
Yeah.
Braden Coots.
That's the Celtic spelling, clearly.
Yeah, it is the Celtic. Another anonymous scout to the Hockey News as we await Cam Robinson. It's just the way he goes about his game. He plays first PK, first PP, and he has excellent hands. He can pick up a puck in the neutral zone, move up swiftly down the wall. He can go wide of the net. He finds players with accurate passes. He's one of those players who has it all with his skating, skill, and sense. Yeah, people like the skating here too, Blake. We had started to get to the portion of the draft where you had some concerns about skate, like the hands, like the skill, or like the size, all of those things, but had a question or two about the skating. We were starting to see some of those prospects go, and this is a good skater. And for my money, skating is one of the most important things when we're talking about a young player and whether they project or where they project in the National Hockey League.
It doesn't sound like he's got the flat-out speed. We're not talking about a speedster, but the feet are always moving. So he'll get there, and it sounds like the fitness and everything is there for him too. So even if he's not a true burner, his tenacity makes up for it, and he's going to be able to cover the ground, particularly on the forecheck, right? So he sounds like a nice player.
He does.
But, the question will be, is the skill enough that you're going to look back and say, yep, that was worth 15th overall? That's the only question mark there. And we're going to have really interesting comparisons, I think, because those high school guys came relatively soon after, with Eklund right after him, and now Carbonell's gone to St. Louis at 19. So, that will be the comparison. You have those guys available to you, and Aitchison to a degree at a different position at defense, but those 3 guys are sort of who we had on our palette, and they go almost immediately right after in succession.
Yeah.
So,
in fact, Carbonell had the privilege of being selected by insult comic Nikki Glazer.
Really?
Now, I thought she was from New York. She's from St. Louis?
Where's John Hamm? That's his office.
Absolutely. Maybe John Hamm finally said, you know what, the NHL asked too often.
He is a pretty working actor. He might just be on a gig right now. So maybe that's
right.
Yeah.
And how about this, Blake? Lou Dort, the recently crowned NBA champion with the Oklahoma City Thunder, a Montreal guy. He was supposed to make the Habs selections today from Los Angeles, but they traded both picks. So Lou Dort's just walking around in a Montreal jersey or jacket with nothing to do in Los Angeles, mere hours after winning the NBA championship.
Is there any NBA player, or is there any team that's looking around going, that's an upgrade on what we got, what we brought here to the draft? Maybe we should get him to do our next pick. Like, yeah, it's not going to be Ottawa because they've got Tom Green, which is an interesting choice. A little on the nose for me, Matt, for the Ottawa side. You got Winnipeg coming up.
Well, the thing about Tom is he left L.A., right? He went back to Ottawa, bought a farm, and basically disavowed celebrity and La La Land celebrity culture.
How many fans watching are like, who is this guy?
You don't think they'll know Tom Green?
I'm guessing Tom Green at his height was still pretty niche.
Yeah, it's been a while since Freddie got fingered, and of course that cameo in Charlie's Angels. I went to a stand-up show here a few years ago at the Rio. It was actually pretty funny. And as you know, like he's not like,
traditional.
Certainly
funny.
the films he did were not necessarily my genre of comedies.
They are the ketchup of comedies, if you will.
Yes, very much so. You know how much I hate ketchup, and I, like Freddie Got Fingered is not one that I'm gonna, catch at the box office.
That didn't make the New York Times best films of the quarter century, by the way.
But like that's part of his act. Like he'll tell you, oh yeah, people talk about how it's like amongst the worst on Rotten Tomatoes. Siskel and Ebert ripped it and whatnot. But do you know how many times I'm walking around any city and someone comes up to me and quotes the movie? Quite a bit. Cam Robinson is going to join us here momentarily. Mike, he tells me he's got the link. He's ready to connect here in a moment or two. He's going to give his breakdown of Braden Coots. Let's get to today's menu, brought to you by Greta, about what's coming on in the rest of the program. And obviously a different program for us here today, going in the evening as opposed to our noon Pacific time usual start. Greta, great spot to watch all the games, to pregame, to postgame. You are mere steps from the stadium or the arena, but it's an even better spot for your team building event or your summer sociable. If you're planning a party this summer, check out our friends at Greta. They have the air hockey, the Pop-A-Shot, the video games galore. The street food menu is fantastic. There's no pretense to it. You get an awesome poutine, a terrific burger. The tacos are amazing. For more info to book your event, go to gretabar.com. Greta, 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin. Cam Robinson joining us here in a moment. Evander Kane, new Vancouver Canuck, and of course Vancouver's own Evander Kane. He spoke yesterday at Rogers Arena. We will discuss what Evander said and didn't say in his introduction to Canucks media and to Canucks fans. And then later in the program, BC Lions in Regina and what could be a battle of backup quarterbacks. The Whitecaps closing in on a very big in-house signing, and they've got a big one this Sunday against LA, plus Canada at the Gold Cup, and more news about Canada down the year as well. A huge shocker for the Raptors today with Masai Ujiri out as team president. All of that covered later in the program. And since we're talking a fair bit of junior hockey players here, at least, Blake, we should also mention that the Vancouver Giants have new leadership. The club has named Nat Dominicelli, Hockey Canada icon Nat Dominicelli, is the fourth general manager in club history, and Parker Burgess, the 10th head coach in franchise history. Burgess had been coaching in the USHL.
Dominicelli was over at the Spengler this year with a group of the managers. By the way, disturbing chat topic. What would the nickname be for Coots with the Vancouver Canucks? Cootsy, Cooties.
Yeah. Maybe it's
Cooter?
just Coots. Ooh.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just Coots. Like, can you really improve on Coots as a nickname?
Guaranteed. You're right. You can't. It's one syllable. It's
one
very
syllable.
easy to say.
Right.
Hockey players cannot resist. They have to change it. They will do something.
It's got to be Cootsy then. You just add the Y.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many hockey players do you think have a dog named Puxy?
I don't think Puxy is a very good name. I don't think
I would bet there's many of them with a dog named Puxy.
No.
Okay, the 20th selection, we should also mention Meredith Gaudreau, the widow of Johnny Gaudreau, has made the selections here today for the Columbus Blue Jackets live on stage in Los Angeles and received a rousing standing ovation. The first time she was up there, Columbus is just making its second pick of the draft. Oh, and how about this? This is a big shocker. They are going with Peter Andrianov from Russia. He's a goaltender, and that means that North Vancouver's Joshua Ravensbergen will not be the first goaltender off the board here in this draft, and that may take up one of the potential goaltender spots. Ravensbergen may fall to the second round now. We'll see if there's other teams that are inclined to go goaltender. This was not a particularly beloved class of goaltending prospects, yet there were a few. Ravensbergen ranks as one of the better Canadian goaltending prospects in some time. This Andrianov from Moscow, was in the mix to be, we thought the second goaltender, but it turns out he is going to be the first. There's another Russian, Medvedev, who plays for the Memorial Cup champion London Knights, who is anticipated as a second-round pick. And then Ivankovic, a Canadian goaltender who's a little undersized. I see they list him at 6 foot. I'm sure he stretched on his tippy toes. Jack Ivankovic, who's been a world junior for the Brampton OHL team. You typically see a run on goaltenders somewhere in the second round. Like someone will take a goaltender, let's say 5 picks into the second round, and then other teams go, oh, we better go get our goaltender now because now the goaltenders are coming off the board.
The Thatcher Demko spot,
20th,
if you will.
Yeah, exactly. Very good, Blake. So the 20th overall pick here goes goaltender Andrianov, playing over in Russia. He's the first Russian, too, I think. If I'm not mistaken.
We should also mention Jim Nill won GM of the Year, Executive of the Year. It's his third in a row for Jim Nill.
3 in a row for Jim Nill. Well, they get to the NHL Final Four. They just don't get over
Bill Zito, number 2. Kevin Cheveldayoff.
How did Zito not get the award in one of the last 3 years? Like, he's been further than Nill. I like Jim. I think Jim is a terrific GM, a stand-up guy. He's an ex-Canuck. I've not ever heard a bad word about Jim Nill.
Yeah. Yeah,
but the other guy has gone farther than you all 3 years.
Yeah, I don't know how Zito re-racks his team year after year. Not fully, but, he has to make changes. Winning teams generally slough off a bunch of players because they go to greener pastures and can cash in. Zito continues to win, and he's second.
Yeah.
No, I'm looking for Patrick Olvin's name.
No, you're not going to find it there.
See it.
You will find Michael D. Gillis, Blake, in 2011.
No, I just mean any votes here, Matt. Not even a vote.
You're looking through the historic NHL Executive of the Year. Did Gillis win the first? Like what?
Something like that.
As I recall, I thought it was a pretty new award when Gillis won it.
Kent Hughes and Steve Staios got at least 1 vote. Stan Bowman got a couple of votes.
Well, and Hughes did well to get the vote before he swings this Noah Dobson fleecing here today. True. I mean, Blake, I was discussing this with some friends in Montreal. You want to talk about weaponizing cap space? Do you remember he gets the first-round pick for taking Sean Monahan off the Calgary books? Then he goes off and he trades Monahan for good return, Kent Hughes does, when he's being terrible. He knows he's going to be terrible. Other teams didn't want to eat the Monahan money. He ate the Monahan money. He parlays it into another first-round pick. He then takes that pick and packages it with a bottom 6 forward and his own first-round pick, and he gets a top-pair right-side defenseman in Noah Dobson. We use the phrase tidy work too often here in Vancouver. That is more than tidy work in Montreal. Like, that is unbelievable work. That is industrial laundry work.
It's true.
If you will, from Kent Hughes, the general manager of the Montreal Canadiens.
By the way, does Columbus only use Eastern European goaltenders? Is that mandatory?
I think that is now a rule. Yes, they are not allowed to use North American goaltenders. Okay, what is Cam Robinson's coming up? He's a presentation of your Pacific Toyota dealers. Blake, why don't you tell them about the BZ4X while we get Cam connected here from Los Angeles?
Yes, the newest addition to the Toyota electric lineup. Drive in the Hoff lane, make your life easier, shorten your workday, and do it in style and with a lot of fun. The BZ4X deserves a test drive. Go to your nearest Pacific Toyota dealer, find out what it's all about. That's all they ask. You'll fall in love. You can finance it for 0.99% APR for 36 months. That's the LE all-wheel drive edition, and up to $5,000 in incentives as well. ShopToyota.ca.
Here he is, the director of content and film scouting for Elite Prospects, Mr. Cam Robinson, weekly regular for us. He joins us from the draft in Los Angeles, and boy, does he look sharp. How are you, Cam?
Thank you. I found myself a nice little hole between the suites and the media row. Hopefully it's not too loud and the internet stays stable.
So first and foremost, the Vancouver Canucks keep the pick. You made a bold prediction that everyone thought was hot takey a couple of days ago on Sekeres and Price. So here's your opportunity to take a bow. I guess you weren't surprised that they wound up selecting a player.
Surprised. Yeah, wasn't that surprised. Just as we got closer and closer, it just didn't seem like anybody was biting on that 15th overall pick. And to be fair, people weren't biting on picks earlier than that too. So there was all sorts of picks available. I'll give myself a little back pat that I nailed that one that they actually did, but I'm maybe 50-50 this week on getting things right. So I can't be too celebratory just yet.
So as we count down to the pick, you say something to the effect of, if they get Eklund or Aitchison, this is a home run. Yes. And both of them are available.
Yes.
But they go Braden Coots. So yes. If you're a Canucks fan, should you be disappointed or only mildly so?
I wouldn't be disappointed with Braden Coots. I'll say that. I think that I think they left some meat on the bone. How about that? Let's just say that. And it's not surprising. I mean, he was mocked to Vancouver in a lot of people's mock drafts because he was literally the only player that they seemed to show any interest in at the combine, right? They took him out for dinner. They didn't, Patrick Alvin wasn't even here, but that's Cammy took him out and yeah, right. So he's a good player though. I just think that the upside, especially for Victor Eklund, was really a lot for a lot of teams to pass up, and especially at Vancouver, the Swedish GM, the Swedish player, he plays such a hard style. I thought it was, a little disappointing that they didn't go that route or the smash mouth in Keishon Aitchison. But again, Coots is a good player. He's a safe player. He just maybe doesn't have that pure upside that a couple other guys left on the board have.
What is lacking there, Cam? Give us the player breakdown and profile scouting report.
Yeah, let's talk about the pluses first. Okay, very speed-driven player, pace, quality two-way guy, really good defensive habits, right-handed center, all good things going for him. A leader, very well respected, very well spoken. Everybody I've ever talked to, speaks very, very highly of Braden Coots. Generates offense at the junior level at a steady clip too, on a not very good T-Birds team, I should add as well. So, everything ran through him until Radim Murtka showed up and started playing 30 minutes a night on that blue line, and then everything started to run through him. What he's lacking is pure, creativity and high-end offense. Is that, when I watch this player, I don't look at him and be like, hey, there's a top six center. I look at him and be like, hey, there's a middle bottom six center probably, right? And we've seen these type of players go in the past, and they go fairly earlier. They go in this range. Peyton Krebs is one that you could compare him to. And Krebs is kind of a third or fourth line center, and that's what he's going to be now. And so Coots, maybe there's a little extra juice there, and he could be a second liner if everything breaks right. But I think that it's more of a middle six, bottom six type of guy that can play a lot of different roles for your team.
I was going to ask, do you think he will be a primary penalty killer? Do you think he will be a guy protecting a late lead sort of player for them?
Yeah, I would say that. And, he's not big, but he's not small. He's kind of a medium-sized player, but like I said, he has good feet, he has good pace, he has good habits, and those are all things that work well on a defensive player down the line too. So yes, I do think that that's the type of player that they're going to be expecting in a few years.
Why do you think at this point in the evolution of the Vancouver Canucks they went safe? They went with a guy that is with the higher floor.
They wanted a center. I think that was very well known that they wanted a center. And I have no idea if they had Eklund ahead of him on their board and they just decided, hey, we're going to stick with the center. A right-handed center to boot, right? It's a difficult asset to obtain versus maybe a hard skill winger. Those can maybe be a little more readily available. And again, I think that they just, maybe not being at the combine and having experience with all these guys, or just kind of locking into your list and being like, this is what we need, this is what we want. And I think probably a few teams fell into that trap, and that's why Eklund slipped, and that's why Aitchison slipped a little bit as well. So they're not the only ones here that let those guys pass. But yeah, I think they really wanted a center, and when you looked at who's available left, it was him and Cole Reshny, and I think Reshny had far higher offensive upside, but a lot more risk attached to him too if that offense doesn't break right.
How far away from the NHL do you think Coots is?
Because he's so responsible and he has the good feet, maybe a little bit sooner than some of these guys that are going to be picked in and around him and after him. But, don't expect to see him anytime soon. I think if he can push at camp in 2 years and then end up in the AHL, that's probably what you're looking at. A multi-year wait in all likelihood. Yeah.
Yeah, Bo was early, but they did let him be the fourth line center for a bit, and that seems like a reasonable expectation that in 2 years' time, not in draft year, draft plus one like Bo, but in 2 years' time, maybe he fights for a fourth line spot and shows them how responsible he is, right?
And it depends on the evolution of the team too, right? Is that like the Canucks, at that point in their juncture, they could afford to do that. And Bo was such a tank too, right? Physically, he was capable of withstanding fourth line minutes. And we'll see if Coots can add that kind of weight to be in that situation. But I never want to rush kids, especially like a mid first round pick. It's just give him all the time, and when he's ready, he'll be ready to take a spot.
Bo also had the NHL body, I think.
Yeah.
At 18 years old. Okay, Cam, we saw this a couple of years ago when the Vancouver Canucks made the trade for JT Miller on day 2 of the draft. If I'm not mistaken, there were a couple of other trades that day.
Canucks have a few of those pesky draft picks still left here.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I know it's theoretically possible, but do you think the lack of picks for player trades today is an indication that that's what we're looking at tomorrow? Or is there any chance that we might see any kind of trade activity involving NHL roster players once we get through this first round and everyone has an opportunity to breathe and take stock?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I hope so, and we're all rooting for something, some more chaos and some more intrigue and drama, because what are we? We're over 3 hours deep into this process here, and we've still got 10 picks left. It's been a bit of a slug, but I mean, to be fair, JJ Peterka and Noah Dobson moving, those are big names. It just didn't happen during the draft. I know that the Dobson trade got announced, but it got done. As far as I know, I think it was basically sewn up late last night, even. So, yes, I think that there's a chance we're going to see some bodies, but I'm far less optimistic than I was, 3 hours ago, when it really looked like Utah was going to maybe move that fourth pick, or the Islanders were going to try to move heaven and earth to get Higgins.
Yeah, that would have been fun. And then, of course, Canucks are in a spot now, huh, buddy? We are running out of occasions to find our second line center. I'll ask you the same question I put to Jeff and I put to Blake. Are we now down to Canucks better win a bidding war for Michael Granlund on Canada Day to fill that 2C role?
Oh boy, that'll be a tough pill to swallow. I had somebody reach out to me and say that St. Louis it looks like the favorite for Granlund too, but so we'll see how that actually shakes down. But I mean, there are so many teams that are looking for centers right now. Like there is an awful lot of teams that are looking for it, and that just obviously increases the value of anybody who has one. And there aren't many out there. Marco Rossi, the Canucks have been all over it. They got to up their offer if they want to get him, and that offer included that 15th overall pick. So if Minnesota doesn't love Braden Coots, then now you've just lost that trade chip too, right? So it's going to be very difficult for them to make a trade now without carving a big chunk out of their roster to make a play. So you're right, it's going to be bargain bin shopping, or it's like, all right, Phil Hedl, please be a second line center.
Yeah. Marvelous stuff, my friend. Thank you for taking some time out at the draft. Thank you for the second hit this week, and I look forward to catching up next week when we have the whole draft class. They have 6 picks, Blake. They may actually come out of this thing with 6 picks, even more if they trade down.
You're crazy.
No,
You're
allowed
crazy.
This
by
isn't
the Vancouver.
Carolina.
Can Vancouver accumulate picks? Like, you talked to me about Columbus goaltenders having to come from Eastern Europe. Like, is Vancouver allowed to trade down and accumulate picks?
Here's something funny
we'll
before
see.
I leave. Real quick before I leave, that the goalie that Columbus just took.
Yeah.
I got a text immediately after it from a Teams Eye guy going, he's not even 18 years old. I was like, well, how old is he? But I went and jumped on with you guys, so I haven't actually found out. But the Russian age rumors are back, and they're better than
Oh,
ever.
my goodness. Here we go. The forged birth certificates from the Dominican Republic baseball hounds to Russian hockey scouts. And we still await a couple of British Columbians in this first round, Lakovic and Ravensburgen. So we want to see them.
Mm-hmm.
We want to see them selected before this interminable night is through. Thank you, Cam. Until next week.
All right, cheers, boys.
Cam Robinson of Elite Prospects, their director of film scouting and content, who is a weekly regular with us. There's now a child on stage, and Gary's getting very loose here.
Yeah,
I
he's
wonder
punchy.
if Gary.
He's punch
I
drunk.
wonder if Gary has a martini over a side stage left or something. Yeah, Gary is also filling the very important purpose of holding the draftee's hat while he puts the jersey on, Blake, and then Gary
That's
presents
a
him
highly
the
paid hat rack.
You can tell Gary is feeling like the star of this show. He tends to cut loose a little bit on the draft. He likes that master of ceremonies. He tends to interact with the crowd, but, barring the big groups of club personnel that come up to the
All
stage.
him.
Exactly. Like Gary is a song and dance act here. He's a Sammy Davis on stage there in Los Angeles, entertaining the masses with all his antics.
Jeff with a super chat here, guys.
Yes, let's get to it.
Thank you from the BC Mental Health Foundation. Are one of Demko Shilov's definitely traded this summer, given Artie needs waivers next season? Also, if it helps, I can unsubscribe and resubscribe on YouTube 120 times. It does not work that way, Jeff.
I don't think that
It
counts.
does not work that way.
Jeff, we talked about this earlier in the week. There are goaltenders of Artur Shilov's caliber, resume, or more regarded that are snuck through waivers when teams set their roster in September every year. We saw it with Jacob Markstrom once upon a time. That is the best time to sneak a player through waivers and get him down to the farm. Now, that helps you the first time, of course. It does not help you if you have to bring him back up, right, in an injury situation and get him back down. Right now, I think we're looking at a scenario where the Canucks are going to keep all three, but did hear this week that Shilovs may have a little bit more trade luster than most AHL goaltenders of some accomplishment, in part because of what he did in the Stanley Cup playoffs last year against Nashville and Edmonton, in part because of how he stepped up in a big way for Latvia. The issue with Shilovs from a acquisition point of view is if you're going to acquire him, you've got to have him in the NHL and you've got to play him. We saw what he was like when he had to sit for long stretches of time last year as a pure backup. So that to me is a complication, but could I see it? Yeah, I could see it, particularly since the events of these last 24, 48 hours, Blake, where they weren't able to execute a trade prior to the draft. They weren't able to use number 15th overall to find that elusive second line center. So, yeah, I would think there are probably some things on the board for the Vancouver Canucks that they didn't want to consider or was down their list of priorities because of the way this thing has played out here, where the 15th overall wasn't used in capital to find a roster forward.
Well, look at the standings in reverse to see who would have first kick at the can at Artie Shilovs. And you look at a team like San Jose, how set are they in goal? Or in the
I
backup?
think they're going to play a Skarhoff a lot next year. I mean, he's a first overall pick or a first round pick. He's a very good prospect.
They got a lot
Of
of
course,
Russian goalies, by the way.
They traded for him with the Nashville Predators. So
Georgiev's UFA, so they probably let him walk.
Yeah.
Romanov is there as well. You know, you want to go too deep, it's not a bad team to do that with. Does Nashville add to its stable by plucking Shelovs off of waivers? I mean, if you see that coming, you might say, hey, let's just hold. Vancouver's got to get rid of one of these guys.
Yeah, or you carry 3 goaltenders early, which is available to you.
Yep.
Or you have a goaltender on injured reserve, which may be available to you. Who knows? Or you're trading one of Thatcher or Lankinen, right? And Lankinen's got trade protection that kicks in Tuesday. So if that's happening soon. And in Demko's case, there's no trade protection at all.
One last super chat before we go. Ryan. Thank you, Ryan. If they are smart, they're letting what they have fill roles to increase asset value or be a home run themselves. Development is our way forward. Well, it's just they're not in that mode. You have to be realistic, Ryan. They want to win now.
Yeah. There is no patience there. They want immediate gratification. And that's been the way the franchise has been governed and managed for a decade now. And that's why the chairman got booed during a championship celebration. Yesterday. Championship celebration. Should be the happiest moment of all time for your fan base, right? And yet he was still unpopular in that moment. Maybe he's catching the drift. Maybe nobody wants to buy out just Paulo. Maybe somebody wants the whole kit and caboodle. We'll see. Anyways, that's going to conclude this segment, and it's been a lengthy one. The draft going on. We got Evander Kane coming up. We'll hear from the new Vancouver Canuck, Vancouver's own Evander Kane, some of his comments from yesterday. And then later in the program, we'll discuss a big weekend for the Whitecaps, Lions, and Canadian soccer. That's all coming up on Sekeres and Price. Evander Kane coming up next. First, our Bet365 bets of the day, Blake Price. And I had been fattening up on NHL Draft props. I love the fact that they were there all week. Today, it could be 2 backup quarterbacks in Regina, so I'm going under 49.5 points in the Lions Rough Riders game tomorrow from the Saskatchewan Capital.
I'm looking at Whitecaps and LAFC. It's the swan song for Olivier Giroux before he heads back to Europe. I thought it would be a bigger number. It's plus 150. He doesn't score. Why is it plus 150? The Whitecaps need scoring from anybody right now with their guys away right now still. So Pedro still played pretty well in the defeat on Wednesday. Pedro Vite to score a goal because he's kind of due now to get a goal. He's got a handful, almost a handful already. Plus 375 on a Pedro Vite goal. Now we're talking.
This segment, a presentation of Bet365. Whatever your bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app, get in on the game. Use code NATION when doing so. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. We'll hear from Evander Kane coming up next. Sekeres and Price from the historic Wall Center. Well, on Thursday, Evander Kane met the media here at Rogers Arena, Vancouver's own, after the trade from the Edmonton Oilers. And we were reminded, if you hadn't heard Evander speak in some time, just how smart and well-spoken he is. Like, he has always been a very good communicator. And I think we heard some of that as well. I didn't love all the answers, Blake, and in terms of the accountability, the responsibility. But
yeah, there's some strange ones there.
Yeah, well, there's a couple ones. So let's hear from him here. First, he took issue with questions using the word character. Here's Kane.
Character is a word that likes to get tossed out very casually. It can be often used as a weapon when describing somebody. And I think, what real character is somebody who shows you who they are when there's scrutiny and adversity, and how they handle that. And I think, obviously there's been some difficult times for myself, but I think I've come out of it better off and better for it. And I think, you learn and you grow each and every year. And for me, that's no different.
He got around, I think, to the right answer, and that was kind of a theme. We're going to play a clip here in a second about his story being well documented, but what did you hear there?
That particular clip was not bad. Was not as bad anyway as some of the other ones, which seemed to diminish and seem to almost, make him out as the victim here in his life. And so I didn't love those, and we can listen on here, but that one was a little bit more conceding of the fact that, again, he says difficulties in my life that I came out the better for it.
Yep.
It doesn't assign blame to anybody. It's pretty agnostic, which, sometimes you just got to say, yeah, I've had I've created some tough times for myself, but I've moved on. Like he seems to be reluctant to accept any blame.
On the sword. Yeah.
And that, again, to use his own word, that builds character. When you admit your own faults, like no one thinks you're weak if you do that.
Yeah, I agree. I would have thought at 34 we heard of a little more mea culpa. Here's the other clip, and this is our friend Patrick Johnson questioning him about his story being well documented. Take a listen.
Documented in a way where, there's not all the information. There's some inaccuracies, and there's some.
What I was going to say was it hasn't been a thing at all. There hasn't been discussion about any of that since you got to Edmonton. Feels like you've matured quite a bit. Is that your feeling? Are you a new guy from who you were 10 years ago?
Am I a new guy? No. No, I'm the same guy. I think, if you're not improving in all aspects of your life, you're probably not where you want to be. And I don't think there's anybody in this room that isn't better off, or learn from their mistakes, or learn from positive experiences to make them better moving forward. So for me, I think it's, Edmonton was great. Edmonton brought me into their organization, and like I said earlier, embraced me. And, the city kind of fell in love with me, and I kind of fell in love with the city. And we had a lot of on-ice success as well. So it was a great experience, and I'm hoping that can continue here in Vancouver coming back home.
And that part of it was very encouraging, right? Because all the reports from Edmonton was, there wasn't any problems here on the ice or off the ice. When he pushed back on his story not being well documented, saying not all the information is out there and some was inaccurate, and Blake and I went through this after the trade, but there were a couple of allegations of assault in 2016 against Evander Kane, one of which he was charged, and the charges were later dropped. The other appears like nothing went forward criminally, and just on the civil side of things. And then you get to the period of time with his now ex-wife and the allegation that he was in so deep with his gambling addiction that he was betting on hockey games and throwing hockey games. And the National Hockey League investigated that and could not find any wrongdoing. So I can understand that part of it, because that is quite a charge to levy against a pro athlete, right? That you're throwing games like nobody in the NHL orbit would want any part of you if that was brought to the table. And so I can understand him still being a little sore that that was out there for a period of time. until the NHL was able to complete its investigation and find the charges unsubstantiated.
Yeah, and just because he got into trouble in other parts of his life doesn't mean that every single thing that's said about him is true. But when you've created that much noise around yourself for a lot of your life, and there's a lot of stuff that clearly did stick. Police lay charges because they see a lot that they don't like, and they'll have a different threshold than a prosecutor will, obviously, but there was enough noise around his life. Some of it, again, the fake COVID card stuff, all that. There's enough there that you're just think, you do still need to take accountability here.
Right.
That you fostered an environment where when an allegation comes up, people immediately, say guilty to you because you've created that noise.
You haven't earned the benefit of the doubt, right?
Yeah, you've lost that benefit.
People.
Yeah.
You've lost people. And I mean, the COVID card thing was just, that's immaturity, and that's thinking you're going to get away with special privileges.
Yeah.
In terms of his style on the ice, and I think this was a bit of a question for the folks in Edmonton, the Alberta Capital, when he was dropped back into a playoff lineup. Okay, he's an older player. It's a lot of miles, a lot of surgeries now on that body. Is he going to play the same rambunctious style? Well, he certainly played it in the playoffs, and he was asked about it yesterday.
Yeah, I've played that style ever since I was 8 years old here in Vancouver. So nothing's going to change. Nothing's really changed when it comes to how I play and what I bring on the ice. I'm very confident in what I can do, and I think Vancouver is going to provide me a really good opportunity to do that.
Yeah, they need that. They need that guy. Hard skill, agitator, pain in the ass to play against, as Patrick Alvin noted in his presser.
Again, if I strip it down here, and if I say if Evander Kane doesn't have any of the noise around him from his, and the Canucks just signed free agent Evander Kane to a 1 year, $5 million contract, what would you think at this point in the proceedings? And I think mostly people would be okay with it. It'd probably still be a little bit of a high number, given that he didn't play last year. But
it'd be a high number for sure. But
but it's a 30-goal scorer. It's
yeah.
I mean, you got to pay.
In the new world, if he's a 20 to 25 goal scorer who is one of those guys who really riles up and gets under the skin of opponents, and especially if he can draw penalties, that is worth something. He's a big physical guy too. So there is a world where this could turn out really, really well. We don't have the clip. He did also talk about he had never heard the phrase contract year or walk year thrown around as much as it has been thrown around with him after this move. So it tells me he's listening and he's reading everything out there, Blake. That was another part of the story.
But again, very strange. We throw around contract year all the time.
Yeah. I think he was a little miffed that people anticipated he's going to have a great year because he's playing for a contract, as though he wouldn't try as hard in years where he was under contract.
Too sensitive, Evander. Too sensitive.
Yeah. Okay. Lastly, nice suits and fast cars. It was a beauty, yeah? The blue and the green, the Canucks colors. And he said he had that suit from way back. That was not a new purchase. It's my grandmother's tartan as well, Blake. So I was very pleased to see that. Here's Evander on all his flash.
With regards to what I wear, what I drive in during the playoffs, they're very nice suits. So if you don't like really nice suits and you want to see me coming in looking like a slob, I can do that too if you want. So, I think, everybody seemed incredibly welcoming. They want to have me here, which is a nice feeling. And, when you feel wanted, you want to perform at your best. So I'm looking forward to hopefully doing that on the ice.
Really nice suits, Blake.
Well, he's also, I think people have been focused on the clothing thing. There's a reason why it's in the CBA, not his clothing per se, but just around the league, Mitch Marner and others too. He's exonerated a little bit by this new CBA.
Yeah,
it's like you wear whatever you want. There shall be no more scrutiny because everybody's allowed to wear what they want. So in some sense, Kane avoids that storyline. That it still would have been ridiculous, but you know that it rears its head. But that part, he gets to take the exit ramp there because it's not an issue anymore.
Here's the other thing I found myself thinking about this acquisition, and particularly after hearing Evander speak, because we had Evander on the Kane, we had Evander Kane on the show several times years ago. Actually caused a little controversy once upon a time when, you remember, we were up at the Moj tournament and I asked him about not wanting to be in Winnipeg and he sort of gave me the, don't ask. But here's what I found myself thinking. We've got a guy who's a terrific talker, communicator. He's not afraid to say things either. He marches to his own drumbeat. He is very much his own man, Evander. He's willing to speak and have the engagement with the fans. Like, I think he does enjoy that part of the job where some guys don't, and particularly in a Canadian market.
He enjoys the showmanship.
He enjoys the showmanship, and he plays a loud game on the ice. So I added up those three things, Blake. Like, this is a fun player. Like, I know there are some Canucks fans out there that are worried he's going to be a sideshow, more drama, and I completely get that coming off the season that we just witnessed. But I also think there's a world where he's just kind of the guy he is in Edmonton, but bringing all the aspects of his personality and his game to the Canucks, which I think could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's a risky move on a hockey level. It's a risky move on a PR level. But I will not throw out, it's a non-zero possibility that it works out okay for the Vancouver Canucks. So he's here, and I don't blame a segment of fans that just say, I'm not going to cheer for this guy. And that's fine, but he is here, like it or not. He is going to play for the Vancouver Canucks, and he may be of help.
Yeah, and as I said yesterday, he is playing for his final NHL contract. I think that matters to him. We should absolutely see the best of him on and off the ice. Sekeres and Price from the historic Wall Center, where if you're heading to a game in downtown Vancouver, make a staycation out of it. Book your stay here at the Wall. Call 604-331-1000. Ask for the Sekeres and Price rates on blackout date supply based on availability. Tuesday, reminder, the big daily face-off free agency special. It gets going at 8 a.m. Pacific time. Tyler Yaremchuk with all his analysts, Jeff Merrick, Hart Levine of Puckpedia for all the contract data, Carter Hutton, Matthew Barnaby, Colby Cohen, Johnny Lazarus. They'll be breaking it all down as the deals come in from around the league. And, of course, later in the day, we will be breaking down what the Canucks do or don't do. But check out the Daily Faceoff live free agency special, 8 a.m. on the Daily Faceoff YouTube channel, brought to you by the Nation Network. Well, could very well be a battle of backup quarterbacks in Regina tomorrow, where the BC Lions face the Saskatchewan Roughriders, who have already scratched starting quarterback Trevor Harris. Poor Trevor, he's out with another concussion. I mean, I don't know how many he needs to have here. Former Stamp Jake Mayer will start for Saskatchewan. Nathan Rourke is listed as a game-time decision for BC. He still looks like he's having trouble putting any kind of zip on the football for those who were at practice this week. So it could very well be Jeremiah Mazzoli, or it could very well be sort of a stripped down BC Lions offense where you're not asking Rourke to make a lot of the difficult, longer or quicker throws. 5 changes for BC on the lineup. Chris Slugger, who's normally a guard, is going to try and play right tackle here because Dejon Allen is injured. Marcus Moore is back at defensive tackle for Jonah Tavai. And that newcomer we talked about from Kansas State, Phillip Brooks, he's getting thrown right in the fire there, likely to return kicks. Yeah, I was quite surprised on.
I like this from Masoli, though, because you might have, I know he's a veteran, but you might have a little bit of you're still a backup. You might have a little bit of nerves built up if you're going out there to try to beat their number one. And the Riders look like they're a pretty good team this year.
3-0.
But when you know it's a backup on the other side, if you're Jeremiah Masoli, you're probably going, why, I think I might be as good as the other guy, the number one. I know I'm better than their backup, for God's sakes. So you might get the best out of Jeremiah Masoli as well.
The other thing is you may not need a lot of points to keep up here, Blake.
That's right. That's right.
Last week after Winnipeg went right down the field and scored, I think Mazzoli and the Lions offense went, okay, we're going to need some points here today.
Yeah.
It turned out the defense really turned it around after that, but here's the other thing. Lions starting 8 Canadians here. So if they do have to substitute Masoli for Rourke, even if it's before Rourke takes a snap, they can do so without having to make another change, swapping a Canadian for an American. This is the first time they've played heavy with Canadians, started heavy with Canadians.
Probably for that reason, though, just in case.
It had been the minimum 7 through the first 3 weeks. The Whitecaps have reportedly re-signed Pedro Vite to a $1.7 million contract, according to Manuel Veth. The transfer market, it will run to 2029, and it will not make him a DP. First of all, explain the DP or not to DP here for everybody, and then explain that, this doesn't necessarily mean that Vite is here till 2029. It's more a protection of the asset from Axel Schuster and Whitecaps FC.
Well, there's 2 different ways to structure your roster in Major League Soccer. You have 2 DPs and 4 U22 initiative players, or you can go 3 and 3. The Whitecaps currently are under the 2 DP rule. They'd like to keep that DP slot open, I think, just in case somebody stumbles into their orbit here in the next transfer window, and also allows them to bring in some U22 help as well. So you want to keep DP slots open just in case. And if you can tam a guy down and keep him just below the threshold, as they've done with Pedro, then that's fabulous. The contract is through to 2029, but that's insurance, because you just don't want a guy departing on a free transfer. As long as he's your property, then when he transfers to Botafogo or Club Bruges, you get the money. And so the Whitecaps want to make sure that they have the ability to sell on with Pedro Vite. That being said, and we've heard this theory floated before, he is playing at such a high level right now in Major League Soccer. He wants to look as good as possible through Ecuadorian eyes before the World Cup, that he probably doesn't want to risk changing what he knows is working, because if he transfers to somewhere in Europe or in Brazil and Argentina, but gets down the pecking order, doesn't get the playing time, is Ecuador going to continue to feed him more playing time like they've been doing, or are they going to reduce that? So he wants to be at that World Cup playing maybe in the starting 11 for Ecuador. The best way for him to do that is to play at an elite level with this club. So he's here through next summer at least.
I realize it's a business, and I realize MLS isn't the top league in the world, and I realize that young players, as they take off in their careers, are going to look elsewhere. I just hope he stays in Vancouver for the next little while. He's been so much fun to watch play, and it's been fun to watch him grow and turn into the player that he has turned into. Caps in LA Sunday to face LAFC in what will be Olivier Giroud's farewell game in MLS.
Au revoir.
Au revoir, Olivier. Salut la visite. His heart never seemed to be in MLS. In fact, it kind of reminded me of 10, 15 years ago, Blake, when guys like Thierry Henry, Wayne Rooney would come over, play a few games and then go, this is not for me. He was done giving Fs. I saw your tweets. What MLS coach told you when he's on the pitch, it's like we're playing against 10.
Yeah. Like his give a bleep meter.
It's quite a thing to say about a guy who at one point was one of the best in the world.
No, it was a worthwhile signing. I think there was a good gamble there that he could be a great poacher at this point in his career, but he is not, and his heart wasn't in it on or off the pitch, I don't think. So he's going back to Lille, it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, how do you not like LA? Anyways,
interesting to note, though, of course, Jonathan David's at Lille for now. So
he's moving on, though. He got the big farewell from the fans. It's hilarious. Like, he's going on to replace Jonathan, the Canadian striker, who is moving on to bigger and better things. Testament to Jonathan David and Canadian soccer. It's Canada, Guatemala earlier Sunday. We mentioned this yesterday. You can watch Canada, Guatemala, and maybe hit up the beach or something like that. Come back for the Caps game in the standalone evening window on MLS, Apple TV. This is a Gold Cup quarterfinal, of course, for Canada. Got a win to advance. And today they announced a friendly versus number 14 Colombia, October 14th. This is in New Jersey. The Colombians picked the venue here. Colombia was the finalist in that Copa last year against Argentina. So a really stiff test for Canada. And of course, they'll be heading over to Europe in September prior to this Colombia match for some tests as well. Including
we used to dream about high-level friendlies, tune-ups like this. And now there's three in a row this fall window. Yeah. It's absolutely spectacular. The downside is don't think Fonzie's going to be. I mean, I don't know. We'll see. I would be surprised if Fonzie plays in those three, but hopefully he does.
It's Wales and who else?
Romania?
Right. It's Romania on September 5th, Wales on September 9th, and then Tuesday, October 14th, Colombia. And all of them on the road or neutral venues, and then you need that too, right?
Yep.
Like, let's play in tough environments. All is not well in Raptorland. Masai Ujiri, the architect who brought Toronto its only NBA title and brought so many new fans on board across Canada with his We the North swagger, is out as team president. Keith Pelly, the new MLSE boss, has now moved on 3 team presidents in the company's portfolio, including Brendan Shanahan with the Leafs and the TFC. It doesn't appear he approves of the president-GM structure.
Well, you say that, but then they promise that they're going to hire somebody.
That was so bizarre.
Yeah, because that was what I read too, is that they just don't want to waste money on presidents.
How does your basketball team need a president, but your hockey team doesn't need it? It's so odd.
Well, he said it's different. That was his reasoning. Like Keith a lot, but he needed more than it's just different.
Also, this is a huge gamble from Pelly. Like, you knew you had a baseline of competency with this manager. Like, you knew you had a guy who was no worse than top 10, right? In terms of an NBA manager, personnel chief. You better hire someone good. Because here's the other thing. He had done a fair bit of the legwork of getting the roster back to a place where it can now compete again in the East.
Well, people wanted to sign with Toronto to play for Masai Ujiri.
That's it.
And that's not the case for the GM right now. And, he was apparently amongst he was a podium executive in terms of salary in the NBA.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, they can save a lot of money by turfing him. But he better bring in somebody who's got a reputation that people want to play for, because that's what he was. He was a rainmaker for talent.
And what I don't get is, okay, so you're bringing this president in. Is he going to want to work with Webster, your GM? And then the other part I don't get, and the ask from Ujiri was that this only get announced after the draft. Like, you're apparently in a Giannis derby, right? Like, you're out there on the market looking to add a player via trade, and big names via trade. They were linked to Kevin Durant as well. There's all this talk about an RJ Barrett trade, which is a big trade for you because he led the team in scoring. I just don't understand why you would execute this move right now.
Giannis was coming to play for Masai. Like, I don't think Giannis is coming now.
If you fired the guy who was going to lure Giannis, holy shit. I mean, this is an all-time gaffe.
Yeah.
Like, if there's even a whisper of that going forward from Shams or from Windhorse or any of the NBA insiders, like, oh, now that Masai isn't in Toronto, Giannis's interest in the Raptors is less.
Well, just wait.
That is devastating for you as Pelly. Also, you noted this as well. Their first-round pick, Colin Murray Boyles, an undersized center from South Carolina. He didn't appear too thrilled to be selected by the Raptors 9th overall.
He clarified later. He said, no, it was pure gobsmacked that the journey to the NBA was finally here. But you'll have to forgive us if we went down the other road. I mean, everybody in his entourage was subdued. Like there was a lady in the red dress there who like couldn't even smile. Like it was like a golf clap and like deadpan face. Like I'm glad he clarified, and he did. Yeah. He said, I'm pumped to be there. Blah, blah. Like, okay, that's better than Steve Francis gave us. But my goodness, it was something.
Yeah. Seas were rained out Thursday. They're at it today on a Friday nooner. Tomorrow, Marvel Superhero Day at the Nat with a comic book giveaway, so get there early. White Spot Family Fun Sunday with a Stuart Baroa bobblehead giveaway. Of course, the kids can run the bases for free after the ball game, and a special Canada Day Tuesday nooner. Get your tickets, 604-872-5232. Results of the Whistler Golf Club poll question from Thursday. We asked you, do you see Evander Kane helping Elias Patterson's bounce back? Yes or no, people said.
I knew it was close at the start. Who won now? I'll say yes won.
Yes won.
53.
55. Doug, put them on a line together. Let Kane prove he has Petey's back. They can become a force. Sean says, newsflash, he's not a top 6 forward. Okay. Whereas your koozie will take a lot of pressure off Petey being an agitator and very well in front of the net. And Hockey Rule says Patterson's biggest knock last year was that he just didn't shoot enough, with Kane here providing the screen. Petey just has to concentrate on shooting the puck on net. Kane will be responsible in front of the net for the rebounds and tip-ins. It's not complicated. No, it is not. Errors and omissions from yesterday's program and beyond. I had none.
You're pretty good. You're amongst the best.
Nothing to note. The one thing I should have said, and could have actually mentioned it here as well, there was a Canadian selected in the first round of the NBA draft. Will Riley of Kitchener, Ontario, a 21st overall, drafted by the Utah Jazz, but being traded to Washington Blake. So he wore the Utah stuff, but even though he's...
And Nemhard 2.0 signed after the draft.
That's right. Ryan Nemhard, Andrew's brother. Also a Gonzaga guy. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I appreciate you spending some time and connecting with the program. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky. Live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time, typically noon Pacific time weekdays. And, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. And keep it local.